Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Ali Thompson tōku ingoa. I'd like to start by discussing the topics which particularly stood out to me in this course and how they subsequently changed my perspective on health and illness. I'll be taking a critical gendered lens. The social construction of health and illness particularly stood out to me throughout the course, as prior to this I often thought that illness would be understood the same pan-culturally across the globe. However, I now realise that our socio-cultural and historical contexts shape our understandings, experiences and attitudes towards health and illness. As such, in Anglo-hegemonic societies, including New Zealand, we live in a neoliberal capitalist society, and this perpetuates the notion of individualism, whereby our independence is highly valued as well as our economic productivity. As such, this begins to attribute someone's health or disease status onto the person themselves, and this perpetuates notions of blame, shame, and stigma. It's interesting to see how cultures which have largely collectivist ideals might see someone's illness as an illness of the whole community instead. Medical knowledge about illness is therefore constructed by interested parties, and I find it really interesting when looking through a critical gender lens on how biomedicine sees itself as largely objective and neutral. However, as evidenced in Martin's article from 1991, we can see how science constructs knowledge through gendered roles which are in fact socially constructed. In understanding health and illness, taking a Foucauldian power discourse was also extremely fascinating. As mentioned in Conrad and Barker's 2010 article, some illnesses become delegitimized due to power in society, such as illnesses that predominantly affect women or those who are less powerful are given less research funding and less political backing. The diagnostic delay for endometriosis is still 8 to 10 years, despite the illness affecting over 1 in every 10 women. Some illnesses are still stigmatized heavily with shame, particularly those that affect sexual organs such as STIs, and this is further marginalized and stigmatized when they affect predominantly LGBTQ communities, including the huge stigma surrounding HIV. This also perpetuates harm for individuals as they may be ashamed to access health screening or regular checkups. We can begin to see that our experience of health and illness and our layers of power and privilege are shaped by our social location. As previously mentioned, people from LGBTQ communities and women may face more discrimination due to historical oppression and exclusion from medical trials, education, and the right to vote. However, our social location isn't that simple. Intersectionality denotes how someone's social context is multifaceted and certain elements can compound, intersect, and interact with each other. For example, a Māori wahine may face a multitude of barriers in her healthcare, from her gender and her ethnicity. This may be further accumulated if she was living with low socioeconomic status, and even more so if she was part of the LGBTQ+ community. She may be unable to attend higher education due to her economic status, and she's existing in an environment which has been designed to support people from New Zealand European cultures, not Indigenous Māori. And subsequently, healthcare may have extreme barriers for her to access, from language barriers, cost barriers, and not being culturally safe. It was fascinating to learn about how social location can contribute to how someone may interpret and experience their own illness symptoms. I previously thought if somebody had an illness, they'd experience their symptoms relatively the same universally. However, I now realize that women experience more symptoms than men and embody more illness behavior. This is due to women's social roles, including the burden of childcare and low income, but often still expected to engage in the financial economy. And women have also been socialized to express their emotions more, whereas men are often socialized to be silent about their feelings. The gender discourse and power discourse may also feed into how often men are believed more in healthcare settings and women are often taken less seriously, particularly if women are of lower education, SES status, and age. It was fascinating to unpack the divergence between paternalistic healthcare and patient-centered care, particularly when understanding power dynamics which situate doctors in positions of authority and often patients as passive consumers. It was really interesting to see how the medical gaze in biomedical discourse can dehumanize people. I personally felt quite disempowered by medical professionals in my own health journey with endometriosis, and I used to understand this as due to gender bias. However, I now realize this is more multifaceted. Practitioners may be in a triple bind, which is pulling them in multiple directions. They may be facing limited time resources and not have the opportunity to deep dive into each individual patient's context. And I now realize through this course that societal systems and power discourses are what perpetuate stigmas, health biases, and unsatisfactory treatment, not individual factors alone. Although doctors can be extremely helpful if they honour the lived experience and expertise of each patient in front of them. Overall, I have thoroughly enjoyed this course. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much.